Alright guys, so you knew I wouldn't be able to get through this lesson without doing something related to Star Wars. So we're going to take a look at how forces act upon a structure through this activity called May the Force Be With You. So as we go through this, we're going to see different types of forces caused by gravity as well as caused by human interaction that would sort of allow for a structure not to be as strong as it should be. So the four are called tension, compression, torsion, and shear. Now those are very sciencey words, but I can promise you that they are not that sciencey once we see them in action. We're going to see how these forces act upon this book on the right here. So we're going to start with tension. So tension is a force that stretches or pulls in opposite directions. So in the example here, we have two people playing tug-of-war over a book. And really, tug-of-war is a perfect example of tension. You're creating the tension on that rope, and you're trying, in the case of tug-of-war, to get the other team to fall off balance and get the rope more in your direction. We see this happen in cable-style bridges. So the Vancouver Sky Bridge as well as the Golden Gate Bridge, maybe a little more familiar to you. So we see these wires which are by tension holding this bridge up. Okay? Sometimes we call these suspension bridges as well. If we look at compression, compression is the force being created by gravity, really. So it's the pushing down, creating damage or creating force and really weighing something down. So every time we sit on a couch, our bodies compress the foam and the springs. We also see compression act upon support columns. So we see that example right here. Okay, so in ancient Greek architecture, we see a lot of columns. Ancient Greeks were very good at building and architecture, and they sort of discovered columns as being this great way to use forces to support weight. Torsion is like a twisting. So when you have to wring out a sponge, you're using torsion to expel all the water from inside that sponge. Okay, we also use torsion when we twist open a jar, so a jar of peanut butter or pickles in this case. And lastly, shear. So shear is the idea of, in this case, ripping a page out of a book. Okay? When a structure is torn or ripped, it is usually as a result of shear force. So in the case of shrubbery, okay, we use shears to prune the hedges to look the way we want. So we have a number of different examples here, and we're just going to apply the proper ones. So I'll read them and I'll give you a couple seconds to think in your head. So the first one is a turning or a twisting force. So I want you to think back to that sponge example. That would be your torsion. A force that stretches or pulls in opposite directions. So think of that tug-of-war. That would be tension. A force that pushes and or pulls portions of an object in opposite directions. So it's that opposite directions that should be the indicator here, that we're talking about shear. And lastly, a force that squeezes or pushes on something. Process of elimination is compression. Okay, so here's those examples again. Give you a couple seconds. So what would you think for this first one here? We have forces pushing down. Is that compression, tension, shear, or torsion? That would be compression. We have that ripping. So think of when you're pruning hedges, you use some shears. So that is a shear force. Remember that tug-of-war creates tension, and that spongy one is called torsion. Okay, so we're not going to worry too much about this. We might worry about it in class. But I want you to keep those different types of forces in mind for when you come into class on Wednesday.